So we're going to talk about creating joy in everyday tasks. So, and of course it doesn't want to flip. There we go. So the ordinary, let's just talk about it. What are we talking about when we're thinking everyday tasks? My idea for this kind of talk is those things that we just have to do. You know, there's so many responsibilities, especially the older we get, where there's just things that we're spending more time doing groceries, doing dishes, maybe replying to emails. They're just those things that you just don't enjoy about your day, but you just have to do them because they are either necessary for, you know, caring for others, if they just kind of keep your house moving, if they're an essential part of your job. We all know what I'm talking about. It's just these mundane kind of parts of your day that, you know, maybe you just don't enjoy as much. You see it as an obligation and not something you actually want to be doing. So what falls into this other category? So we have the extraordinary, I guess, where we're talking about the things we want to do, the things that are exciting to us. And then we have the other, the ordinary. So what are these things that we just have to do? We don't necessarily think about them, but they're still a little bit burdensome. And just spoiler alert, I will be asking if you have any like ideas about what these other things are. Like, I would love to hear what your guys's like pet peeves are about, you know, like house maintenance and all those things. So please share them in the chat, because I would love to hear. So we have housework. So laundry, dishes, cooking, just those things that just have to be done to keep things in order. My personal pet peeve, I hate laundry. I really don't know why. I absolutely cannot stand doing laundry, and it really piles up for me sometimes. So that is my pet peeve. So yes, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca says returning phone calls. Totally with you, which is kind of our next topic here, which is, doesn't want to pop up, work and work related. So Rebecca says returning phone calls, mine is emails. I really don't like to write emails. I'm also even not that good of a texter. And they're just things that I just have to do, and they feel really, you know, I have to put my energy into it or whatever it is. They're just kind of a burden and just kind of an annoying part of my day. So work and work related. We have work related because a big area of this kind of ordinary or other is commuting. And I realize that this doesn't necessarily relate right now, because most of us, I'd be willing to say, are working from home. I myself and the rest of our CMHA staff are all at home, so commuting isn't really an issue anymore. But, you know, in the normal state of things, a lot of us do have big commutes. Luckily, we live in New Brunswick, and hopefully most of us live relatively close to where we live, but some people live in rural areas and work in the cities, or wherever you're coming from. Commuting can definitely be one of those burdensome moments. They just feel like empty time that gets you from either what you want to do to what you need to do, or from the first need to do to the second. So commuting is a big one. It's one of those big, just kind of empty spaces that's just kind of there. Paperwork, like we said, emails, returning phone calls, all those things. Just a lot of us consider a lot of our kind of tedious work tasks. You know, we can't all have our dream jobs, and we don't all have our dream jobs. So there's definitely these aspects of work that sometimes can feel like just time, just something that has to happen. It's just something you're doing. And then I put others. So if anyone has any contributions, I would love to hear what you're thinking of when you think of these ordinary moments, these times that just kind of have to happen to keep your day moving, but they don't necessarily leave a huge impact on you. You don't step away and think, man, I had a great time doing laundry. Like things like that. You might feel satisfied and happy, like, okay, great, I got my laundry done, but nobody thinks, oh, I can't wait to do my laundry. That's going to be great. So if you have any suggestions, please leave them up for me, because I would love to see what your concepts of ordinary and mundane tasks that you just kind of have to get through. Exercise, yeah, oh my God, absolutely. I am definitely in this time right now where I'm trying to figure out a way to make exercise not just one of those things, and it's so difficult because it really is. It's so necessary and beneficial for our health, keeps us moving, keeps us going. But yeah, it is definitely one of those things that just has to do. Paying bills, yes. Online baking, have to do it, absolutely. I'm really happy that you guys are really getting what I'm going for here, which is just those things that you just have to do. They're not exciting, you just gotta do it. There's no really other way to explain it. So why bother talking about this? You know, you might think, you're telling me I just have to do it, so why are we having this conversation? Why? What's the point? They're just things that I have to do. I have to accept that. But I encourage you to think about these 3 reasons why: time, impact, and memories. So let's do time first. I tried to get this things to pop up like incrementally, but I couldn't work it out. So we'll just have to look at it all at once. But let's talk about time. The thing is, all these things we're talking about, they are massive chunks of our day. And when, you know, we put it all together, it really adds up. So this is from Stats Canada. I will remind everyone that these are averages. So it's taking a bunch of data and using statistics to figure out what the average number is. So the thing about that is that nobody's day looks exactly like this, because some of these, if not most of these, actually add out to 23 hours or so. So this is just to give you a sense of how much time we're kind of spending, but not to say like this is what our day looks like. So work and work related, I put the different age groups here. There's not a huge difference, but I think it is worth considering, you know, the different stages and how that impacts. But most of us, work and work related is about 9 hours. So that includes commuting, and then of course just working. Unpaid work, 4 hours. So those are things like, you know, housework or cooking or childcare, things like that. And this is a big time to say, remember, these are averages. A lot of parents are going to be spending more than 4 hours on childcare. It really depends on what your life situation is. Again, average from Stats Canada. And personal care, 10 hours, that includes sleep. So none of us without sleep are getting 10 hours of personal care. It'd be great if we were, but we're not. It does include sleep. So again, with the averages and everything, to think about it, if your work is gonna look more like 7 hours, you might be spending extra hour or extra time on unpaid work. And if you work for maybe 10 hours a day, you might be getting less sleep. So the personal care is kind of going down. It's really a sliding scale, and it's just to give you an idea. But the point is, these are all things we have to do. We have to work. We have to do the obligations that come along with working. We have to keep the house going, and we have to sleep. We have to, you know, wash ourselves. We have to have showers. We have to eat. We have to do all of these things. And it takes a lot of time. So why bother talking about how to bring joy into these moments? Because it's so much of our time, we don't want to just move through them. We don't want to go through the motions because we're missing out on so many hours that we could bring joy into, which we will talk about shortly, how to do that. Impact. So I personally, I'm studying psychology at St. Thomas University. I just kind of realized it didn't really say anything about myself, but there's one fact. And I personally really prescribe to the positive psychology movement. And positive psychology is a field of psychology that is literally studying the good life. It is the study of the good life. So one of the studies that they have conducted in this field, and it's totally legit. I know that sounds like way too good to be true, but it's a field, it's a growing field of experts in this world doing real research and coming up with real results. So one study that was conducted in this field is about how our extraordinary versus our extraordinary experience impact us. So a lot of times we think about those big moments in life, you know, concert coming up, a trip, a vacation, just holidays, that's another one, birthdays, like those big moments that, you know, you're looking forward to them. They're not every day, but they're so exciting, and they're short moments, but they're big. So we often, when we think about our happiness, we think about these things. We want to be doing everything. We want to be living some kind of glamorous life where we get to go to all these places. We get to travel so much. We get to, birthday every day, those kinds of things. And we consider those to be our biggest moments, our happiest moments. And while there's a lot of happiness in those moments, while they're happening, research has found that the older we get, the more our happiness stems from the ordinary experiences, the day-to-day life. It's kind of like extraordinary experiences are great, but the ordinary experiences have the potential to add up and add up and add up. And if we're bringing joy into those moments, there's so many more of them that our happiness stems way more from the ordinary, the everyday, just kind of how we've built our life in general. We get more pleasure and more happiness long-term from those moments. So in other words, the older we get, the more happiness comes from our everyday experiences. Yes, including the mundane, including these things we just have to do. So that's a reason to think about it. If our happiness comes more from, and it's not in the sense that if you have more extraordinary experiences, then it's going to come more from that. It's not a time thing. It's more of a, it's comfort, and it's regularity, and it's the feeling of being content, opposed to kind of going up and down all the time, going from extraordinary to just the mundane or just the ordinary. So yeah, again, that includes the mundane, and that's a reason to think about it, because if we're taking so much joy from these ordinary everyday experiences, and if that amount of joy impacts us so much in the long term, you want to be thinking about, okay, if that's where my joy is coming from, how can I get the most joy from those moments? Also, I just want to say, I love that people are chatting on the chat button. Please keep it going. It makes me really happy to see. And again, the biggest element I miss from these kind of Zoom calls, it's great that we can do it. It's great that we still have a chance to connect, but I miss the conversational element. So please keep it coming, because I love the chat button. Okay, and then the last study I want to point out is memories. So, memories. Yeah, okay, sorry, I get so excited about the chats that I just get distracted. So memories, this is another study that I wanted to bring up to you guys. Another study examined the impact of recounted ordinary experiences versus extraordinary experiences. So it's after these moments have happened, before we're kind of talking about while we're living it, but now we're talking about after it's happened, what do we take joy from in remembering? So, like those feelings when you're going through a scrapbook and you just get a nice, warm feeling of this, flush of memories, and just, it brings you back to a good time. So researchers at Harvard had students create a time capsule where they detailed recent events and estimated how interesting and meaningful these memories would be to them. So they asked them to write things down like, what's your favorite song right now? What did you do yesterday? What was the last thing you did with friends? What was the last social event you went to? Very just usual, average day-to-day things. And then they had them estimate how interesting or how meaningful, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but how interesting and how meaningful these would be, X amount of time later, just kind of revisiting them and reading about what they had done basically that week. So they found that in general, we vastly underestimate the value of these kinds of memories, and we find much greater joy in their reminiscing than expected. So what that means is that people would write down their memories and be like, yeah, I mean, it's going to be cool to look back. But when we think about it, we're like, yeah, this was just an average week. There's some good times. There was some, mundane times, things we just had to do. It was just an average week. But when they went back and they actually looked at everything that they had written down and had experienced in that week, even though it was not a special week, it wasn't about birthdays or concerts, there was nothing big going on, it was just an average week like we're usually having, they found so much more joy than they expected in reminiscing those things. So basically that shows us that these mundane, ordinary days become so much more important to us than we would have realized when they're happening. Because again, we're thinking of these moments as just something we have to do. It's just everyday life. It's, you know, when we say that's life and things like that, we don't expect those things to matter. We expect it to be Christmas that matters. We expect it to be our birthday. We expect it to be, I keep saying concerts. I kind of acknowledge my own bias of being 20 years old and how wide my scope is, but someone had mentioned things about, I think, spending time with their grandchildren, and yeah, so of course, you know, it brings you joy, but you might think that time that I saw my grandchild graduate, that's a big moment. You might think when I saw my kids, you know, go to school for the first time, those are big moments. Remembering those are going to bring me joy. Yes, they do. But we underestimate how much the Monday play date meant, even though every Monday our grandchild comes over. We underestimate how much joy those moments would bring us. So it's something to really be conscious of, to see that an actual study evidence came out and say, these matter more than we think they do. So slow down and make the most of them, even if it feels ordinary. So a similar study, just really quickly, I thought this was really interesting, just being able to compare the two, is that they had couples record events on a typical day together. So just like hanging out, whatever, nothing special going on. Maybe you watch a couple episodes of Netflix or make dinner together, things that aren't that big. And a Valentine's Day together. So Valentine's is an example of one of our extraordinary experiences. It only comes around once every while. There's an implicit specialness about it. You know, we go out of our way to do something exciting or whatever it is. And when they went back and looked at these 2 days, because they recorded, like, let's just say like a diary, for example, of what they had done, what they felt, whatever, they had accurately predicted the excitement to revisit Valentine's Day, but had completely underestimated the joy from revisiting a typical day. So again, it's reminding us that, yeah, of course, we do take joy from these extraordinary moments, but we expect ourselves to take joy from them, and we do, but we don't expect finding joy in these ordinary moments, but we do find that joy. So it just kind of brings your awareness around to the fact that these things matter. They feel like every day, they feel like just moments passing you by, but if you slow down and you be there and you experience them, they do bring us so much joy than we realize. All right. Okay, so before I kind of move on to this next part, I do want to remind everybody about the Q&A option. So if you have any questions, please pop them in there and I can visit them towards the end. So how do we make these moments special? So rewards, pairings, I think I have a fifth. Yes, okay, perfect. So what are different ways that we can get the best of these ordinary moments? How do we take it from, you know, oh, I have to answer my emails, or, you know, cheering ourselves up for that hour-long commute that we have to do every day, just those times that we just think, you know, how can we add to that? How can we take them from being just something I have to do to something that brings us joy and something that contributes to our day? It's not just a part of your day, it adds to it. So we're going to talk about 5 different ways, and these are kind of like the categories. So there's rewards, pairings, atmosphere, framing, and optimizing. About to become more clear. So let's start with rewards. So perk yourself up through these ordinary tasks with unordinary rewards. Sorry. So before I even talk about this, I want to point out that this is not about deserving. It's about having something to look forward to. We can kind of get stuck in this trap of thinking, you know, if I answer my emails, then I can have a piece of cake. If I exercise, then I can watch an episode of something. That's not what I'm saying here, because no way, because you deserve good things regardless of what you do before, and it's important to feel that. What I mean by rewards is having something to look forward to. So it's powering you on. It's kind of like a little competition with yourself. There's something at the end of this. Think about a race. when you think about running, a lot of us don't like it. Some people genuinely do like running, but usually the best thing about running or running a race is the feeling afterwards, the feeling of satisfaction, the feeling of the runner's high, the feeling of, you know, I did it. That's what I mean. You keep running because you think about that moment, not because if I run, then I deserve to feel good. That's not the point. We want to give ourselves something that can make us power through the things that might be tedious or boring or whatever, and we kind of bring ourselves back and bring our excitement back by thinking just 4 more emails and then I get this. So again, not deserving, but having something to look forward to. So just a few examples. If you have any suggestions, please drop them in the chat. But after dishes, this is a bad one for me. If I relax on the couch during supper, the dishes stay there for 3 more days. So by telling myself that if I, like once I'm done the dishes, then I can relax on the couch, that makes me really excited, and I'm not getting distracted as much because I'm thinking, yes, I get to do this. This is going to be fun. This is going to be great. So it adds a little something to that experience. Sorry, just checking the time. Hot bath after mopping, book a massage after meeting days. So like if you have, we all have those days at work where it's packed full of meetings, not our favorite days. So something like giving yourself something that, you know, is coming at the end of that day, it's just going to give you that little extra spark while it's happening. So pairings. So pair something joyful with chore-like tasks. So disclaimer, this is usually better for mindless tasks, because if you're kind of adding something to maybe like writing a paper or sorry, again, that is such a student example, but if you're doing something you need to concentrate, it can be a little bit harder to add something to that because we get distracted. But for tasks like commuting or for doing the dishes or cleaning up, anything like that, things that just kind of happen automatically, it can be awesome to pair something with that, pair something joyful with that, so the experience just feels better. So my favorite thing to do, favorite special beverage during your least favorite workday element. So every morning I start with emails because I hate replying to emails, and I'm very much a get things over with kind of person. At that point in the day, my coffee is still warm, it's still fresh, it still feels really good. So yeah, I'm doing emails. I don't really love it, but I do have that separate moment of joy at the same time, which is holding my coffee cup, feeling how warm it feels, like tasting how fresh it is, things like that. So no, it's not changing the emails, but it's adding joy to something that might feel a little bit ordinary, might feel a little flat. Making dinner. This one's a really good example. Sometimes we really don't look forward to making dinner. We're tired. We just have to do it because we just have to eat, and we're just not looking forward to it. Instead of just making it something you just have to do, make kind of like a little event out of it. Make dinner with your partner. That can be really exciting. Like, it can be fun to work together on something like that. It's a good time to chat. Making dinner with your kid, maybe that's fun because you get to kind of teach them new tasks. Adding joy to this thing that is just ordinary, that usually wouldn't stand out. You're adding something to it that might make it feel different. And then this one is probably the easiest and best tip, and the one I use most often. Make use of podcasts, phone calls, audiobooks, music, whatever it is that just kind of brings a little joy to your experience. I love podcasts. Right now, if there's any Office fans watching this, I'm listening to the Office Ladies podcast. I love it. It makes me laugh. I learn kind of interesting things about the show that I've already seen so many times. And it really fills in the space of just kind of those empty moments that maybe you're example, so much easier. So whenever I drive to Moncton, which is where I'm from, I'm currently living in Fredericton, it's about an hour and a half. And if I'm really not feeling the drive, I always put on a podcast, because I could just say, oh, this is just something I have to do. I just have to drive, whatever, I'll just do it. Or I could say, yeah, I have to do this drive, but more importantly, this is giving me a chance to listen to this podcast. And it becomes more about enjoying the podcast because I'm just on the highway. I'm not really thinking about it. As long as I'm keeping my speed correctly, it's becoming more about that joy that I'm adding. So podcasts, phone calls, audiobooks, music, those are great things for these kind of mindless moments of like cleaning. It just goes by so much faster, and it becomes way more about that joy you're adding than the task you didn't really want to do. And then you have accomplished both. You've not just enjoyed that podcast, for example, you've also gotten where you needed to be, and now that's done for the day. So atmosphere. No matter what you're doing, it's always better in an inspiring and joyful place. So I just took this photo, again, biased student example, but I can only speak from my current experiences. But I remember this night in particular because I had so much to do. I think you can see, I don't know if you can see my little mouse, but if you can, I'm circling this to-do list. And it is long. And I was just so not feeling it. I did not feel like studying. I had stuff coming up, you know, university life, whatever. But taking a few minutes to just kind of slow down and set up my desk here. I love the table I was sitting at because I love the wood color. I had a nice glass of water in this jar here. Taking that little bit of time to light the candle, make this chai latte, have my notes kind of laid out in like a nice way, it made me feel so much more inspired to do what I just had to do that I wasn't looking forward to, because maybe the studying wasn't going to be any more fun, but I was adding that extra sense of, you know, at least when I'm doing, I like the space is beautiful, the space is inspiring. So it's not necessarily about changing what you just have to do, but adding joy around you, and your atmosphere is a good way to do that. So, excuse me. I think that's the last one. Okay, that's definitely the last one. So just some examples of how to perk up your atmosphere a little bit. And these are 100% very specific to me, and that is why I would love if you kind of add some things in the chat, because it's definitely like a personal thing. But first of all, the big one, tidy, be in a nice clear space. Even if the whole world behind you is just a complete mess, maybe you're sitting in your dining room table and to your back is your kitchen and the dishes are piling up. Everything in front of you and in your eye line is clean and beautiful and just fresh feeling. Light some candles, definitely one of my favorite tips. Nice mugs, those always bring a little extra something to my day. Good lighting, like if you like it really bright, make it really bright. If you kind of prefer like a soft, gentle, maybe kind of warm tone, put that effort in. It's really about those little things that, again, this took me like 5 minutes to set up, and it just made me feel so much just more, it felt more like an event what I was doing rather than just this mundane something I just had to do, the ordinary. So it's about that little extra push you give yourself to put just a little bit of extra effort into this everyday, usual, going through the motions kind of task. So I really encourage you to think about this, because it's one of those things that before you do it, you're like, oh, why bother? I have to answer emails. I'm just going to do it. Just taking 5 minutes to set up something that feels good to you, it's so worth it. And I feel like that's kind of undercutting it, but there's really no other way to explain it. It's one of those things that feels like a big thing beforehand, but once you do it, you're so happy you did. So framing. This is about mindset. So how are you looking at the ordinary? Is it boring and burdensome, or is it peaceful and content? So these things that we're talking about, there's a reason we're talking about them, and it's because usually they do feel boring and burdensome. And we're all gonna have those days where it's just like, oh my goodness, I don't want to make that drive. Oh my goodness, I don't want to return that phone call. And that's just natural, and that's just life. But in general, are you looking at, you know, a average Sunday at home as something that's kind of boring, you wish more was going on? Are you looking at doing the laundry as, you know, the last thing that you could possibly want to do right now? How are you looking at it? So here's some tips for kind of stepping outside of this mindset of, oh, I just have to do it. So first of all, just take a breath. One really good way to take these kinds of experiences from just something happening to you is to practice, and I know this sounds a little too fancy for us sometimes, but just practice some mindfulness. And again, I don't want to lose anyone when I say that, but think about it this way. Think about the difference between having a shower, because you just have to wash yourself and like practice hygiene, obviously. That's why we have to shower. Think about the difference between that and having a shower because the water feels warm, because your skin feels clean after, because you love the smell of your soap. It's automatically becoming a different experience when you think about it that way. A lot of people like to practice mindfulness when they're doing the dishes. So instead of just having to do the dishes, maybe you're noticing the way the water sounds going into the sink. Maybe you're noticing the way the hot water feels on your hands versus, you know, the coldness of the dishes. I don't know. That might be the way to break glasses. I'm not sure if it's the opposite way around, but you kind of get the point. Just slow down and notice these things, because you're giving yourself this moment of peace and just presentness that maybe you wouldn't get if you were just doing them just because you had to. Ask, is anything actually wrong? Why do I feel like this is such a boring task? Why does it feel so kind of like an uphill climb, I guess? I have a bad habit of this one. I will start to say, you know, oh, this could be so much better. You know, I could be feeling so much happier right now. And I say those things, I could be more. But is anything actually wrong? No. So take that moment and say, you know, I have to do the laundry. I could be doing something else. I could be feeling better. But am I actually feeling bad? No, I'm not feeling bad. So why don't I just leave myself in this moment to feel content to get this done and just be okay with, you know, sometimes we just feel okay. Sometimes we just feel content, and that's a really good feeling. We don't really love the ups and downs, but sometimes when we're just in that comfortable middle place, we think, oh, this could be better. So just ask yourself, is anything actually wrong right now? And if the answer is no, just sit back and get what you're doing done and be okay with just being okay. Practice mindfulness, we kind of already went through that. See ordinary as an opportunity. So that one really comes more to not necessarily the tasks, like the things we just have to do, but maybe the days that, you know, more could be going on. So maybe it's a Friday night and you feel like you're supposed to be, you know, seeing friends or going out or whatever the situation is, or going for dinner with your partner or whatever. It's Friday, it feels like it's supposed to be something, but really you're just at home relaxing. Why don't we see that more as an opportunity rather than something we're missing out on, something we should be doing? I should be making more out of this day. I should be making more out of this time. Instead, look around and say, wow, the way I'm sitting on this couch after such a long week, it feels so good. I feel content. I don't feel like I'm going from all the way down here to all the way up there. I'm just here and I'm just enjoying it. So see it as an opportunity for those kinds of experiences. And the last tip is optimize. Sorry, I was checking the time again. So we've talked a lot about changing or adding to the situation, but optimizing is more about working with it. And I have two examples, and these are really big things that I implement in my life as much as I can. So the biggest one for me is ease. A lot of these tasks are it's hard to gear ourselves up the more complicated they are, especially when it's something that just shouldn't be complicated, because there's kind of two different kinds of challenge. So there's the kind that's really inspiring and that kind of fuels us and gets us excited and gets us in that like flow state, and we like those. Those are problem solving, like we thrive off of those. But there's the kind of challenge where I don't just have to do my laundry, I have to pick up all my laundry off the ground because I was being lazy this week and I let it get all over the place. That is not the kind of challenge we enjoy, because they're tasks that could be easy, that are already kind of boring, hard to motivate ourselves to do, and we've just made it harder. So look around, especially look at the things that you don't like to do, and see how you can make them easier and how you can make them more seamless. Because even at an unconscious level, you're going to be more likely to do these things and to get through them with less kind of discomfort and less like discontent to do them. So for example, I've said it 100 times already this hour, but I hate doing laundry. I always have, always will. And it's not even that I don't like chores. Like I'm pretty tidy. I don't mind cleaning. I don't mind doing the dishes, and like usually like I make my bed, things like that, but I hate doing laundry. Don't know why, but I do. So when I was noticing that my dislike for doing laundry was kind of interfering with how clean I kept my room, or how much it would pile up was really the big thing. Because if I didn't like it, I would let it go too long, and then the longer I let it go, the less I wanted to do it, and the cycle would continue. So one thing that I did was I bought a basket that has two sections, one for clean and one for not for clean, one for dark and one for white. Now, this is a really small thing, and it's not that I was consciously thinking to myself, ugh, I hate that I have to separate my laundry. But by having it already separated, because when I just put it in the hamper, it's already separated from darks and lights, it was automatically easier. So my brain was more likely to say, yeah, we can do that because it's already half done. Really, I just have to put it in the machine now. So these little tips of like easiness. Another example is I take a lot of supplements in the morning, and I hate it. I hate having to open up every little individual jar, and I hate having to mix my probiotics and things like that. So what I do is, once every couple weeks, I separate them out into little baggies or whatever it is, and say, okay, I just have to grab the bag, pour them in my hand, get a glass of water, and drink it. So much easier. Again, it's kind of the same process, but that little tiny thing of making something that is already kind of simple just even easier is going to make it feel so much less burdensome. So think about the things that you, for whatever reason, there might be no rhyme or reason. You might think, oh, why can't I just do the laundry? Why do I hate it so much? We might not have an explanation, but think of whatever those little pet peeves are for you and think, okay, how can I make that just a little bit easier? And don't underestimate the little things. Like I said, I have no issue sorting whites and darks, but when I was giving myself that kind of head start of doing it already in a much more effortless way, it made a huge difference. So don't underestimate those things. Lastly, for working with whatever these things are, make it special. So again, a lot of things we talked about, we were adding to it. We were adding joy, even though, driving and podcasts, not really the same thing, but they can work together and I can add it. But this is working with the things. So get the best smelling soap. So that's just one example, but I hate doing laundry, but maybe I give myself this opportunity to smell this clean clothes that, oh, I love the smell. Use the clothesline instead of the dryer. We all know fresh clothes off the clothesline smells so much lighter and fresher, and it's just such a nice feeling. Optimize it. Get more out of that experience. This is kind of a bad example for right now, but I have go to somewhere with free samples when you shop. I don't think anywhere has free samples right now, and I don't think they will for a long time, but it's just a really good example of what I mean in this tip. We all loved the free samples at Costco. That's a little thing that's just making it special. I just have to do the groceries, but here's this little extra thing. I can put that little extra effort of going there and getting that extra part of my experience. Use a room spray before bed. Some of us really dread that kind of winding down time. It's because we're so used to so much stimulation. We like to be on our phones, we like to watch TV, we have a lot of information coming at once. So sometimes when we have to just lay down, get in bed and try to fall asleep, that's really boring, that's really ordinary, all of those things. Adding something extra to that, like using a room spray, something that feels nice, is working with it. Yeah, okay, it's still kind of that task of having to wind down and slow down, but we're putting this extra effort of giving ourselves something like a nice smelling room to kind of compensate. So working with it, adding extra things to that experience, making it even better. Maybe you spend an extra couple dollars on your shampoo because you just love the smell and it makes you more excited to get in the shower at the end of the day, whatever it is for you. Okay, and then take it one step further. This is my last slide here, so if you have any questions, now is definitely the time to get them in the Q&A box. But so just a little extra side note. So the last study I talked about was those memories, and it was how much joy we take from going back and looking at memories of ordinary days. So the reason why we don't realize how much we enjoy those memories is because we don't remember them unless we put the conscious effort into it. You know, it's easy to remember what happened this Christmas. It's easy to remember what happened a couple years ago when you went to that concert you were really excited about, because those are unique experiences. They stand out more. But these ordinary little things that happen, making dinner with your kid on Monday nights, or going on a little dinner date for no particular reasons, or little things like that, we forget about them because they're not unique, they don't stand out. But as we've seen before, there is so much joy to be had in keeping these memories. So here's just a few little examples of how you can, after you've kind of gotten good at adding joy in and getting these, and having these moments and making all these ordinary everyday things happening, how do we remember them? How do we get even more out of them outside of when we're actually doing it? Sorry, I had the hiccups, bad timing. But here's just some little ways. Keep a journal. I say that very lightly. I've tried to keep a journal so many times. It's one of the best wellness tips. It's so good for us. We know it over and over again. But for some of us, it's just rough. And I am one of those people. But if it is something that you can keep up with, keep a journal by your bed. Jot down some details of the day or whatever every night. And it's just like a little treat to yourself, just because you'll be able to revisit little good moments that you realize were good in the moment, but you'd forget about. So if you can, kudos to you, definitely do it, keep your journal. Take a photo a day. That's maybe an easier example because most of us have our phones on us all the time. So take a photo a day, and if you can, give them some context. If I'm sure there's apps out there that we can have little digital like scrapbooks or whatever. I don't have Instagram anymore, but when I did have Instagram, that was one of my favorite things about it, was being able to revisit the photo and the caption that kind of like expressed what was going on. One sentence journal. This is kind of for people like me that really have a hard time with the whole journaling thing. Making the effort, it might be hard, but it might be a little bit easier to say, okay, I'm doing a one sentence journal, which is every night before I get in bed, I write down one sentence that summed up the day. Those have been have shown to be really, really effective, and so don't underestimate them. I have vlogs here, which is like a YouTube thing, and if anybody is a fan of YouTube, they might be laughing at me and thinking like, okay, you're telling me to become a YouTuber? Like, that's weird. I have vlogged down because, again, I'm not good at journaling, but I do make an effort I've kind of come out of the practice, but in my first year of university, I was, at the end of the day, I would just grab my phone and start talking to my phone for a few minutes. And that sounds really silly, and you might feel silly doing it at first, but it's a way effortless, or more or less, more effortless way of keeping a journal if it's something that's a little challenging for you, but still getting those ordinary details that you would forget. And I can fully report that going back on those videos, I always remember something that I completely forgot about, and it always brings me so much joy. And there's so many more ways. Look it up on Google, or maybe read some books about journaling or memory keeping, because there is books out there. There's one book called The Art of Making Memories, I think, and it's really, really good. Just look it up and you can find it, or if you go on like Pinterest, or if you have any suggestions, you can leave them in the chat, but just get creative about it and think, what is a way that I can keep track of my day-to-day life with a little less effort as possible, because it's more likely that we'll stick to it if we do it that way. But just make that effort, because as we were talking about before, there is a huge benefit to be had to remembering these kind of ordinary moments. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I see that there is a lot of input in the chat, which makes me really, really happy. If anyone has any questions, please do ask. And yeah, I see people are adding some suggestions, and I love that. But if you have any questions for me, I love talking, which is probably very clear right now in this this talk. You can probably tell that I do like to talk. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. My email, if you're interested, is fredstudent. I can put it in the chat, but it's fredstudent@cmha.ca. Or if you're looking to get in contact with me, you can easily go on the Facebook page for CMHA, and I'm sure someone would be able to give you my email there. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. Please stay for the survey aspect. Oh, Q&A. All right, let's see. Okay, so someone says, what is vlog? Because they missed it. Yeah, no problem. So a vlog basically just means video blog is what I mean. However, how I like to look at it, instead of the usual, I guess, like more structured way where people take a video and edit it and post it and all these things, a vlog in this sense is just take out your phone, do a little video, say today I did this, this, and this, or this brought me joy, whatever it is. Usually they're about a minute long when I do them. And yeah, it's just, if journaling isn't really your thing, if you have a hard time keeping up with that habit, it's a way easier way to do it. So that's why I like to bring up the blogs. How to set a healthy reward system. I really like that question. That's awesome. So I really appreciate that you're thinking about it in that way, because like I said, it can be really, it's a slippery slope when you start thinking about rewarding yourself in the sense of how do I, you know, make myself deserve this good thing. That's not a good way to think about it, because we deserve good things regardless of what comes before it, regardless of our accomplishments, whatever it is. Excuse me, just give me one sec. Sorry, I've been talking too long. Yeah, so how to set up a healthy reward system. I would say, first of all, remember that. Just use that affirmation. I deserve good things no matter what. But what you should be thinking about it is something to look forward to. And I think one little tip for how to keep it away from that deserving point is make them unrelated things. So a lot of times, an example of a reward is when people have cheat days for exercising. So, okay, if I exercise all week long, I can have a cheat day, I can eat anything I want. Those two things are really intertwined. They're proven not to work anyway, but that's a whole other discussion. But the point is that exercise and nutrition are so closely tied that we're going to associate accomplishing one with receiving the other. What I would suggest is just thinking, okay, here's something I don't necessarily want to do. What is something that I do want to do? Now I have this to look forward to. Don't make them related. Just look at it as a little extra boost, a little extra something that you're really excited about, and just kind of hold on to that excitement, not the I have to do this first, if that kind of makes sense. Please let me know if that wasn't clear, or if that wasn't helpful, so I can definitely keep talking about that. Yes, tea or coffee. The person that said that tea or coffee makes their mouth dry, yeah, it was a bad choice. So how do I encourage myself to do something? Oops, sorry, I did not mean to do that. Oh, sorry guys, I was trying to get on the chat here. I don't really know what you can see. Okay, there we go. So someone asked, how do I encourage myself to do something that might have a bad outcome that I don't have the courage or don't want to face? So I would say, I think that this is a great question, and I think it's definitely worth going into. I would say in terms of that question in particular, that might be kind of a wider thing. So, but I will talk about it. I just mean that, you know, it depends if it might have a bad outcome. That might be something really small, which definitely fits into what we're talking about. But if it's something more daunting and more challenging, sorry, I'm just gonna, this is easier. Yeah, this is better. If it's something that's kind of larger, that might be a different discussion to have. But let's talk about this. So something that is kind of gearing yourself up to do something that you might not necessarily want to do, you might not necessarily want to face. One thing I would really suggest, and this really helps me a lot, is I like to get the more difficult things done first. So if there's something I'm really dreading, something that I really have to work myself up to, not to be really cheesy, but like Nike, just do it. That's kind of how I think about it. If I don't want to do something, jump into the deep end, which I know sounds really scary, but the thing is when we put it off, it builds and builds and builds. And one thing I've really learned, especially when it comes to things you don't necessarily want to do, is that time moves on and keeps going. So regardless of if you're giving yourself all this time to work up to it and get stressed about it and think about it and pick it apart, it's going to happen. It might go badly, but the world's going to keep moving and there's nothing you can really do about that. And that's the kind of mindset that I've really learned now that I've been working in school and just had a lot of responsibilities, and everything gets really overwhelming, and I really dread, this week coming up. And then I look back and I say, no matter how much I dreaded it, no matter what may have gone wrong, it just kept going anyway. So I know that sounds maybe kind of like the wrong mindset. Like, of course, think, what's the worst that can happen? It will probably go good. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's going to keep going anyway. So what I would really suggest is just getting it over with, going headfirst into it, because the longer you wait, I promise, the more it's going to bother you, because that thing you have to do, you're going to do it at some point anyway. So you could wait longer and make the process of discomfort and worry and all of that last so much longer, or you can just do it, have the same amount of discomfort while you're doing it, but without all of the worry beforehand. So I hope that was kind of helpful. Sorry, just trying to see if any of the recent comments are. Yeah, so the potential for bad outcomes is the reason for my procrastination. Absolutely. Of course it is. And that's often why we procrastinate. It's either maybe boring, like we were just talking about, or maybe you're worried about the outcome. Absolutely. However, I would encourage you to think about it in the sense that whatever's going to happen is going to happen regardless of when you do it. So you may as well just get it over with and be able to keep moving and get past it. So I know people are taking off, which totally makes sense because we are just about at 1 o'clock. If you have any more questions, now's the time, or otherwise, feel free to reach out to me. I'll type my email right now if anyone is interested in getting in contact with me. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this talk. It went better than I thought it would because, like I said, I jumped on pretty quick. And if you do have an extra minute, please do stay to just answer the really quick survey. It will take like no more than a minute. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me.